Well, with more on the Conservative auto plan, we're now reaching out to Kyle Seeback, Ontario MP, and the Conservative Shadow Minister for Labour. Kyle Seeback, thank you for joining us this evening.
Happy to be here.
So listen, walk us through a bit more about your plan. How exactly will your party get, the North American automakers to build more in Canada than they already do?
Well, first of all, I just want to talk about the state of the auto industry in Canada in general. We're seeing real declines in production from a decade ago, about 2 million vehicles a year, down to 1.2 million, which is the last year we have numbers for, which is 2024. And what we've actually seen from Statistics Canada is a further decline in exports this year of 32% in the first part of this year. So we're hemorrhaging auto production. What we're trying to do is bring back a policy from the past that worked exceptionally well. The old Auto Pact, it took Canadian production from around 700,000 cars a year up to 3 million cars per year. Now things have changed obviously since the Auto Pact was in place. So it's a modified version of the Auto Pact, which means that for every car that you would produce in Canada, a company is therefore able to bring in a car tariff-free, because we import a lot of cars into Canada, including the companies that manufacture here. Now, if that policy is extended to the United States, the same thing for the companies there, we believe that this will slowly increase production of vehicles here, because right now the United States buys about 15 million vehicles per year. They produce about 10. Canadians, we buy 2 million vehicles a year, we produce 1.2 million. We want to get those numbers higher up to parity. And this one-for-one policy, we believe will do that. And it has the added benefit of reshoring some auto production in the United States, which why we think it is attractive for the American president as well.
Okay, let me jump in there because I'll begin with the one-for-one, because Lana Payne, as you know, is the president of Unifor, this country's largest private sector union. They represent many auto workers. And she has issued a statement saying that she's skeptical of this plan, essentially because if your goal is to create a one-for-one ratio of produced cars with cars sold duty-free, well, she says that ratio is already nearly achieved. So how does that increase jobs that would have a meaningful impact on Canadian workers?
Well, I will respectfully disagree with Lana Payne on this. That's actually not how it is. If you were to look sort of like specifically at each company, and that's one of their complaints, is that, for example, this with Stellantis doesn't actually, their import and production is about the same. But we're talking about the auto sector as a whole in Canada. We have many companies that produce. It will actually lead to an increase in production. We've talked to the auto producers about this. They agree it will do that. Brian Kingston from the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association said that he thought this is a very good policy. And even some of the Unifor local auto manufacturers themselves think it's a very good policy. The head of Unifor 222, which is the Oshawa assembly plant, said, finally a plan that will restore production in Canada and save thousands of jobs. So there's different opinions on how well it will work, but we believe that plus cutting the GST will actually spur that production, because for every percentage cut in sales tax, you generally see a 1 to 2% increase in purchasing. So that will get us an extra 10%, and we believe that the tariff-free Auto Pact will get us the rest of the way.
Are you being a little overly optimistic, though? Because clearly we have an American president who says he does not want Canadian cars. We've seen North American car companies reshoring to the U.S. in response. And every American official who's given an interview, including interviews here on Primetime Politics, they have been very clear. Any new trade deal is going to include a tariff. Are you being overly optimistic with this?
Well, look, I don't underestimate the challenge of trying to sell this to the American president. He's notoriously difficult to deal with. But what I do think is there's some options that we have in here that are attractive. Number one, we are by far the United States' largest export market for vehicles, and they're going to want to protect that. It's $27.5 billion worth of year of finished autos that come into Canada. Number two, we're talking about, if this plan's accepted, we'll align on things like Chinese vehicles, which the Americans are very much against. And we are also talking about harmonizing on things like tailpipe emission reductions, which also makes it easier for American vehicles to come into Canada and Canadian vehicles to flow south in the border. We believe over time that this will actually repatriate some of the production from Mexico. They export about 3.5 million vehicles a year to Canada, the United States. The one-for-one plan will actually rebalance that over time, which is why we think all of this makes it actually very attractive for the United States.
Listen, quickly running out of time, but I have to ask you because there's so much emphasis on the North American car makers. But right now, when you look at the numbers, it is Honda and Toyota, the Japanese car makers, that account for more than 76% of auto assembly in this country. Is the focus here off by focusing on North American car makers, U.S. car makers, rather than working with the Japanese?
Yeah, it actually doesn't focus on that because the number one issue for both Toyota and Honda is tariff-free access to the United States, because most of the vehicles they manufacture actually go into the United States, and they're getting the same tariff challenges as the big three automakers are. So that's a big part of our plan, which is to get them tariff-free access so they can continue to sell all those vehicles into the United States. What I've been told very clearly by all the auto manufacturers, auto manufacturing in Canada cannot survive at the 15% tariff because that makes those cars unprofitable to go to the United States. We believe this plan will get us there, and it'll be good for all the automakers.
Kyle Seeback, I appreciate the time this evening. Thank you for that.
Thanks very much.